The whole thing with you then? Tell us all about it. Go ahead.
So leading the pack here is G. Moore, Mike Oscar Uniform Romeo. They used to be owned by Dave Gilmore of Pink Floyd when it was retired from the Air Force, and has subsequently passed through a number of owners, and we were lucky enough to acquire it about 4 or 5 years ago. That's followed by G. Tim, Tango India Mike Mike, who was previously owned by Tim Manor, a private collector at Kennett Aviation. And then they're actually going to turn left, and they're going to go into what's called an oblique loop. Now this is not a fully vertical loop. If you imagine a loop turned on its side by about 45 degrees. They'll still pull quite a lot of G-force during this manoeuvre, but not as much as you'll see when they break into the more dynamic second section of the display later on. So round the back there, accelerating probably 300 plus knots, that's about 350 miles an hour, pulling probably about 4G. They're sitting about 6 to 8 feet apart, coming back around the front, and you get a nice belly up camera shot just here, 3 pretty jets. When they were in service, they didn't have smoke in their training role, the flight training role, where they were based at RAF Valley for the fast jet training program, and many, almost all fast jet pilots in the Air Force in the 60s and through to the end of the 70s will have flown the Gnat and are probably very familiar with it and either loved it or hated it. It was great when it was working, and pesky little thing when it wasn't working. It's quite a complicated little aeroplane. You'll see now over to your right, high up, they've moved into line of stern. Chris still leading, Kev Whyman in the Red Arrows liveried jet in the second position, and Mark Fitzgerald bringing up the rear, number 3 in the RAF Valley. And they're going to roll left. And they'll go all the way around, in formation, and out to the left. Now the Gnat first flew in 1955, so it's quite a vintage jet, and the technology in it is far from computerized. It's just what we would call mandrolic. It's hydraulics and electrical. It can be quite temperamental at times, but we've got a dedicated set of engineers who look after this 7 days a week sometimes, particularly in the summer, and we're very, very grateful to them. They do a great job to keep these old aeroplanes in the air. Now the Gnat wasn't designed as a trainer, which is the format of the 3 examples that we're showing to you today. The Gnat was actually designed as a fighter by a guy called Teddy Petter, who worked for an aircraft company called Folland. And he'd gone there after designing a number of aircraft like the Canberra, and he'd been involved in what we call an echelon right formation. Now the charity, the Heritage Aircraft Trust, that owns and funds these, we display them in the brand of the Gnat display team, but it's actually a charitable organisation. We've been on the lookout for one of these original Gnat fighters, the single-seater version, for many years now. And we finally tracked one down in America a couple of years ago, which had been an ex-Indian Air Force fighter, and had actually flown in the Indo-Pakistan War. So it's got some pedigree. That's now sitting in our hangar being restored, and hopefully we'll have it on the circuit, if not next year, certainly the year after. It's taking shape nicely. I'll talk to you a little bit about the F1, the Gnat F1 fighter project, G-Slayer as we've called it. We'll tell you about that later. But if you look right ahead of you, coming towards you in your 12 o'clock, down what we call the B-axis, is the Gnat display team for the opposition break. Mark and Kev braking left and right. Chris Heames, the leader, pulling up and over the top for what we call a half Cuban, which is a half loop, half roll manoeuvre. Mark and Kev, now this is the more dynamic piece of the show, and Mark and Kev, to the left and the right, are more or less mirroring each other, and they've done a derry turn and they're pulling back round now onto the main left and right axis. So if you can split your eyes and look left and right at the same time, you're doing well. Then they should cross with a closure of approximately 800 miles an hour in front of your eyes. And I think you'll agree the smoke from these little jets is very pretty. And now we move from the opposition pass into what we call the roulette, which is a manoeuvre where they'll cross at the back again, and then back at the front again. So you get 3 opposition passes and chances to capture that perfect shot of them passing each other. Fitzgerald now coming in the third full barrel roll around the smoke trail of Kev Whyman as they pass in front of you down the crowd line left to right. Showing off the manoeuvrability of this pretty little jet. Also coming in from the left again, following them, and it's a different perspective on the world at 200 feet inverted. George, have you ever been lucky enough to...
I'm quite a big fella, and I would have missed it because when I went through Jet Provost training, the Hawk had pretty much come into service, so I would have missed it altogether. But it's an aircraft you sort of manoeuvres like this.
Yeah, now this one, the guy from the right mark is going to pierce the two guys coming from the left, straight through the middle.
Very clear.
So they're just changing now from a line astern, the guys heading out to the right, they're turning into an echelon left formation. And you'll hear that they call out a number of different calls to each other to assist the guys, the synchro guy who's across the other side of the airfield, with his situational awareness and to understand exactly what's going on. Now the two from the right have come back round in echelon now. They're going to go through crowd centre, and at the same time you'll see the third jet is somewhere loitering, probably quite high. I can actually see him from my vantage position, but he'll be going and joining up onto the two aircraft that have just passed to your left, and then they'll be repositioning for a final break. The Gnat bomb burst. Ladies and gentlemen, that was the 2015 three-ship display from the Gnat display team. Please put your hands together for the guys. They've been working quite hard up there. I'm sure they'd appreciate it.
And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for everybody here. Great, and if you're getting another one as well, I mean, you're going to be back to the Red Arrow soon, aren't you? Circa 1966.
Well, there's the potential for us to actually get two more in the next 2 years. We certainly know about the first one, which is this F1, a single-seat fighter Gnat, because they were only ever operated by the Indians, and in war, and also in peacetime by the Finns.
Yeah. Well, we really appreciate you talking through this, Dan, and it's very rare that you get him on the microphone, and I think we all enjoyed that. So well done. Thanks for your support, everybody. And that was the Gnat display team, and we really look forward to lots more of that next year.
Thank you very much, George, and I will endeavour to be less reclusive in future.
Yeah, well done you. Keep it coming, and we look forward to seeing that. Certainly the fighter Gnats. That was